Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Wheel of Time, Season 2, Episode 4. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Okay, so the way this episode works, obviously, everything typically is separate enough on its own thing that yes, it all connects to the overarching plot, but everything's kind of individualist, like the individual parts of the episode just kind of doing their own thing that I'm able to kind of talk about them one at a time. But there's so much in this episode that's so intermingled, and it's because of this that leads to this, that leads to this type of thing in the episode. And so regardless of that, I usually kind of bounce all over the place a lot with that stuff, so I apologize. So for this one, I'm going to try and take one part of the story, stick it all the way through with certain characters, and then move on to discussing another part, because it's all intertwined. So first and foremost, let's start off in the White Tower, which I think is so interesting, where we're picking up with Nynaeve after everything last episode, and she hasn't quite shaken it. I think it's interesting too that she has her ring, but she doesn't wear it all the time like an Aes Sedai does. Like, she was sitting on her bed, and it's not until she heard someone knocking at the door. She didn't know it was a Gwen, but it's like she had to pick up and put her ring back on, because it's like probably not supposed to take it off, but the ring is a constant reminder of it. Yeah, I became an accepted, but what it cost me, that just meant like everything I went through wasn't real. So that's a hard pill to swallow, especially when she has the one person who she's supposed to lean on in this situation, and Gwen telling her it's okay, none of that mattered. And it's like, did it really not matter? Especially because because she even says it later, she lived there for years. So shaking that is, well, hard to shake. And I think especially where her and Gwen were, especially because, hey, where they left off, like, they never really had much of a relationship in those years. So it's probably weird for her to be like, oh, we're kind of on the same side. We were just kind of doing our separate things in that years I was living inside of that, inside the Arches. But also, before she went in there, she heard how Egwene really felt, and so that kind of, I think a lot of that is kind of bubbling beneath the surface, because now I'm sure there's even that thing of, is this even real? I'd rather take that fake reality that I lived in for years over this, because it's just this giant hole in her heart right now. And she went to go try and talk to Maskim and Home Dude, both of Alana's warders, but they're off of her right now. So the one guy that was there, like, oh, what path are you going to choose? He's like, basically, I hope you don't become a redcoat. It's like, she kind of doesn't want to. Leandrin would want her to be, but she doesn't want, like I said, I'd assume if she was going to do anything, I would assume she'd become like a green like Alana, but I could definitely see it end up, interestingly enough, just because of Moraine, I could see her end up going down not because of Moraine, but just the fact is that was the first Aes Sedai that we in the show got really introduced to, was Moraine, if I remember correctly, back in season 1. So, and Moraine was kind of there with your journey, so feels like she might influence, positively or negatively, she might influence that. But to be fair, Lorraine's doing her own thing, and even Alana's kind of making, like, she's not really pushing for you to become like a green, but you have the 3 representations of the Aes Sedai, at least amongst them: red, green, and blue. She hasn't really had too much experience with like anyone in yellow or brown, I think. Not that I can remember off the top of my head, but either way. And the sad thing is, Egwene wants to help out her friend, because it's like, right, I would have never made it through without Nynaeve. Nynaeve was going through her own loss at, finding out about Rand dying, but she put that aside and focused on looking after me. And what kind of friend am I if I can't be there for her in that moment? And obviously, Elaine, it's so interesting when you include Elaine in that conversation, because it seems like it does feel like at times like she might be that wedge that ends up popping up between Egwene and Nynaeve, but I think at the end of the day, she has the best of intentions. She is a friend with Egwene and just wants to kind of look after her in a regard of like, Nynaeve might not always be able to have your back, but I got yours, because we're kind of on the same level. She's an accepted now, so like that scaling doesn't equate necessarily in the way that you would think it would. So like that friendship is already going to have its hurdle, her being an accepted, you not being. So thought that was interesting. But when it's all said and done, Nynaeve had this interesting conversation with Leandrin where it's like, right, she knows that pain of having not necessarily lost her child because she still has her son, but granted, he's old and he'll eventually die. And I love that breakdown of the males are the men who can channel are cursed. They are cursed to kill the ones they love. But we women, like Aes Sedai, we're just as cursed. The only difference is we live long enough to slow down the aging process. And that means that we live long enough to watch the people we love pass away. It's a different kind of curse. It's not like one's better than the other. They both suck. One's like, yo, you got to live with, hey, this person you love, you killed them. Oh, on this other side, you have to live with the fact that you had to watch them grow old and die, and they're gone forever. So either way, the people you love leave. It's just a matter of whether you're a man, it's a violent, terrible way, and in a women's way, it's like, a sad, prolonged way, because it's like, right, you got to watch them. Like, you get to hold on to them longer, sure, but you still have to watch them pass. You even have to kind of let them go so they can live their lives, because it's like, right, there's kind of no future for us, because I will keep going and you'll die. So, like, go live your life rather than being tied to me. So that comes with its own pain and its own heartache. So I thought that was so interesting to kind of put that perspective of, doesn't matter, man or woman, you're cursed if you're able to channel. It comes with its own downsides, either, in either gender situation. So... because Lorraine was trying to, Leandrin was trying to explain to Nynaeve that feeling she's feeling right now, that pain, that sadness, it will all eventually fade. Granted, it will take time. It's not like it's just going to happen overnight. But also, Leandrin also talked about, she kept her son for secrets, like for 80, 90 years. And she's like, I thought I was protecting him. But at the end of the day, I could have found so many other places to protect him. But I kept him close by because I didn't want to lose the one thing that kind of kept me going in this life. The one person I cared about more than anything in this world, because he's kind of my reason, my way to kind of ground myself. Because without something to ground you, the Aes Sedai, because that's actually a conversation that comes up with land side of things that I can tie in here, or it's a conversation of, their warders as humans are their 10 poles that kind of ground them to being recognizing they're human and not gods, because being able to do what they do puts them in a godly position in this world, and we ground them, and her son, Leandrin's son, grounds her. So she also lets Nynaeve know about, there was an attack in the west, and basically talking about Perrin and stuff, and I was like, interesting, because we know Perrin escaped, but we'll get to that later. But because Leandrin had talked to the Keeper, and it's like, have you talked to the Amelin about this? And the Keeper's like, yeah, while the Amelin's away, the Keeper's in charge, and so every time I'm opening my mouth, that means I'm speaking for the Amelin or whatever. But Leandrin, she's that conniving person, because her maniacal laugh and stuff, it's just like, what are you planning? And it's telling Nynaeve that, it's like, you told her not to be rash, but you knew exactly what she would do. So she got Egwene and told her to come along. Well, she didn't want Egwene to actually come along, because it's like, you'll get in trouble. But for Egwene, it's like, the reason why I'm here in the tower in the first place isn't to feel some I want to feel powerful. It's like, I need to be powerful, because if I was strong enough, if I was stronger, I could have been by Rand's side, and he maybe still be alive right now. So for her, it's like, I'm going to get stronger so that I never have to sacrifice or lose anyone I care about again. I'm going to be strong enough to stand by them and fight them. And even if we fall, at least we fall together, and not one of us has to live without the other. So that's what it's been the reason why Gwen came to the tower in the first place. She's not here learning channeling just for her own fancy of I want to be an Aes Sedai. It's like, no, I want to get stronger to protect the people I love and care about. So she wasn't going to make that mistake again. She wants to be stronger for all of them, especially considering everything that went down, where it's like, that's why she tried so hard to pull Nynaeve away from the arches, but wasn't strong enough. So that was another, and I think that's why it struck even harder with the Nynaeve kind of keeping her distance, that Egwene feels like she can't say or do the right thing around her now. So it kind of goes toe and toe and hand in hand with the Rand of it all in that capacity. But as they were leaving, Elaine followed them, but then Leandrin's there, and I thought Leandrin was going to be like, all right, it's fine, you can all come because I'm going to help you too. But then she's like, well, you looking at Elaine and like, that's going to be an issue, and she knocks all three of them out. I was like, what are you doing, Leandrin? Now, considering other parts of the episode, I'm like, which we'll talk about later, I'm like, she's working with the Dark One because she's going to get something out of it, and that something out of it is prolonging the life of her it's her son. Because she says that basically in life you basically have to find that new thing to ground you. When that thing is gone, you move on to the next thing. But for Leandrin, that thing that's grounding her right now is her son, and it's like she would have to move on and find something else. But I'm sure it's like, no, I want to find a way to save my son and maybe even prolong his life. Maybe that's what she's going to get from especially Ishmael. Maybe just in the Dark One in general. But I feel like that's the only thing I can think of. Why would she kind of go that far? And because she made a point about Elaine. Because Gwen's one thing and Nynaeve's another. But Elaine, there's a lot of focus on her being the daughter heir. It's like, you are going to be a complication. You're going to be a nuisance to kind of have to explain this and deal with. So maybe she was hoping to get... I'm sure she knew she was going to get Nynaeve, but she was probably hoping to also get Gwen, but not get Elaine along for the ride, because that complicates things. So what her plan, I don't know, maybe it has nothing to, well, considering on the part of the episode, it's like, no, she's definitely working with the Dark One in some capacity. But the question, once again, is what is she getting out of it? And for her, it has to be prolonging the life of her son, but we'll see. So there's that side of things. And speaking of the Ishmael of it all, we do find out that he's the one that got sent to see Min, and it's like, because Min doesn't want to hurt anyone. She was promised to, hey, so Leandrin was like, oh, the Aes Sedai will remove your vision of being able to see people's future, which obviously you see that precog ability, the downside of it. It seems like her family took advantage of it and basically made her, probably it ostracized her amongst people, because it's like, it's hard to be around people when you're constantly, without even trying, constantly seeing their future. And it's like, it's a little grating on you when you're just like forced to see how so many people's lives turned out, especially because you see the good along with seeing the bad. And she probably saw a lot more bad than she did good. So that really took its toll on her. She finally got away from her family, but she had like a nightmare about her aunts dragging her back to go back and doing it. So I wonder, do they not have the ability? Maybe they had a sister who had the ability that might be gone, and now that she's gone, it's up to men. Maybe they had the ability too, but I'm assuming the way they're using her, maybe it only happens every once in a generation in their family. So men just had the unfortunateness of being born with that ability. But the person who comes to visit her is Ishmael, and it's interesting that her powers can't work on him. Probably to his benefit and detriment, but it's like, yeah, because probably don't want to know what your future holds, but that's also like kind of spoilers for the story, so you probably keeping that vague of like, yeah, you hope that light wins out in the end, but Ishmael's probably so certain, him and the Dark One are so certain, like, yeah, we're going to win in the end. This is going to be our battle to win, but it's like, you're probably going to lose the greater war, but... yeah, Leandrin set this all up, so it's like, because of that, I'm like, yeah, so she's definitely working with the Dark One, getting something out of it. Just like, he's like, oh, you want help with your visions? I can remove that curse for you, but you have to do something for me, and that's take Matt to where Rand is. And it's like, why? She was like, what's waiting there? It's like, she saw the vision of Rand getting stabbed by Matt, but she doesn't know that, Coherent or whatever the place is where Rand is currently, she doesn't know that that's where Rand is. Like, so she's helping that destiny become a thing. So I'm curious, will she eventually tell Matt the truth? Because like the knife he stabbed Rand with, is the same like cursed knife that he's been away from, and I don't remember where that is currently. Because doesn't Thane have the knife? Because I was saying last episode he has the horn. He has the horn, doesn't he? Or does he have both? I don't know. Because my thing is, maybe they want to use Matt to get rid of Rand, because it's like, well, we could use you, but if we can't sway you to our side, the last thing we need is the light to have you on its side as a dragon, so we'll remove you. Or, once again, maybe it is a thing of Rand asked him to do it, and it just kind of backfires and doesn't kill him like he was hoping it does. Or maybe it is a situation that ends up unleashing more of his power. Who knows how far in advance, like, Ishmael and the Dark One have it all planned out of like, oh, we need this to happen, so this would happen. Like, how far these dominoes will fall and what the aftermath will be. We also catch up with Perrin a little bit. Him and Elias, we learn the truth about who they are. They are wolf brothers. And I love that Perrin asked a question that I've been asking. He's like, are these wolves wolf brothers? He's like, don't be stupid. I was like, okay, so they don't turn into wolves. These are just regular wolves. They're kind of werewolf-esque, but they're more human, but they have the instincts and the powers of a wolf, and they channel and connect with wolves. So it's interesting. It's like, right, you eventually lose the taste of cooked meat, so you become more animalistic. But they have this ability where they can almost send these visions to each other. It's like, oh, here's like this vision of this deer. It's like the pack must have seen this, and they're sending this vision to us to let us know, like, hey, a deer's in this area. You must be hungry. Like, let's go. It was actually really sad too that we found out that one of the wolves that's helping Perrin, that he's kind of really who really likes him. He says like later on his name is Hopper, and Elias was like, oh, close enough, but it also lost its mate, just like Perrin, and apparently they've all known about Perrin for months. In particular, Elias has, because he's like, that's why we showed up to save you and Egwene last episode from the people in the white robes. But it's like, why have you known about us the entire time? Why haven't you like reached out before now? It's like, well, for one, they don't trust the Aes Sedai, because for them, it's like they disdain anything they don't understand or trust. They don't trust anything they don't understand, and that's sadly the same thing for all humans. So he probably wanted to pick a more appropriate time when Perrin was alone, because if he came into what he really is, Egwene I'm trying to remember, I think Egwene saw what he was to some extent when they were getting rescued. I think she saw that, but maybe she did. Maybe that didn't happen while she was around. I don't remember now. But that's going to be a scary thing, as he's kind of becoming less and like himself. Or maybe the argument could be that he's becoming more of who he really is as a wolf brother. But that's a side of things you don't want a regular human around for, because it's going to scare them off. But yeah, he also brought up that every time Perrin dreams about his wife, his late wife, they've seen it too. So it is that your sadness and your pain, it's there with us too. It's like we are kind of like, we almost have this hive mind that we are all connected. And that's why I think Hopper likes Perrin a lot. And Perrin was having that vision of like Hopper like hopping up and down. I thought that was him being like, oh, I want some food, so toss me some food type of thing, and let's play or whatever. But it's like, no, it's like, oh, that was his way of telling him his name. And like I said, Elias was like, yeah, close enough. So that was kind of interesting to finally get like a name and full understanding of like, okay, so they don't turn into wolves. These are just regular wolves, and the Wolf brothers kind of have like an animalistic connection. I mean, maybe they can eventually turn a little werewolfish, but it'd probably be like Teen Wolf, Werewolf, both the movie and the TV show, that far, or maybe probably nothing at all. The yellow eyes is probably as far as it really goes, but it's just like, hey, our keen connection, but we don't actually turn into wolves. You know what the other thing I was thinking of? I was trying to remember if there was some other werewolf property that you're like, oh, you turn into like an actual wolf on four legs. It's I believe it's a British, I think it's allocated as like a kid's show, but it's called Wolf's Blood. I believe that's, yeah. I haven't seen it in so long, but yeah, I believe that in that one they turn into full-blown wolves on four legs type of situation. We also catch up with Lan as he's with Alana. I thought they were immediately going back to the tower, but they're kind of staying around. I think Alana, maybe friends and maybe even family, but Lan's trying to figure things out for himself. He's still got the poem, but I don't think he's quite figured it out. We don't know how much Old Tongue he really knows, because it's written in Old Tongue. So, but obviously he's having this conversation with Alana and her two warders, and it's this whole conversation about what he wants to do. You know, that despite their bond being the way it is right now between him and Moraine, it's like, you could still always go back. Because I want to say it's Mascom that was kind of like, yeah, we could always go back. Don't let anyone else convince you otherwise, because his bond with Alana is always not severed, but dulled. And it only gets kind of ignited when they're going into battle or when they're in bed. I think she does that so that he doesn't have to worry about other people in his head, because it's like that's a lot to take in. But also Alana kind of does it for herself as well, because I'm sure like what he's feeling, what he's kind of going through, it's like, I want your feelings and your thoughts to kind of just be yours alone. Like, you didn't really fully it's like it's a very interesting dynamic that apparently the people in the White Tower do know of that, because even Lon was like, wait, that's your circumstances? Because it seems like so irregular for an Aes Sedai to kind of like drown out that connection of the bond. So, but yeah, like each one of them was trying to approach it a different way about how they were going to talk to him about the whole Moraine of it all. Because Alana was like, right, you should have known Moraine like before she became like an Aes Sedai, because like something happened to her like a year or so before she met Lon, and she was kind of a different person. It's like she made the metaphor kind of anecdotal connection of like, yeah, it's like water turning into ice. It's like once you see it as ice, it's hard to ever believe it was water at one point in time. So, you know, and even Alana's kind of like, she didn't really even know Moraine before like everything. That just knowing that, and she didn't go into specifics either, because it's like, hey, it's not my story to tell. You should learn it from Moraine, what happened to her. Or maybe she just says like something happened to her, because it could be Alana even doesn't know the details of it. Then you combine that with, like I said, I keep forgetting Alana's other warder's name. It's like, isn't like Ainvo or something like that. I brought it up earlier, the conversation they had about Aes Sedai being gods, because Lon plays that line over and over and over in his head. I love that conversation of that. The thing they never think about, the quiet ones, is that the fact is we're having the entire conversation in our head. That's why we don't talk a lot. And he was like, I can tell that look in your eyes. You're playing whatever that one thing is, something that she said to you. You're playing it over and over in your head. Her one word is now turned into her one thing that she said to you is turned into 1,000 cuts, because you're cutting yourself over and over again. It's that thing, I've talked about this previously, of that it's that one thing that someone can say to you that maybe you said to yourself once or twice, but it cuts even deeper when someone says it, because you hear it in their voice when they said it to you, and now you replay it over, and it's like it freshly cuts you over and over again. And the thing he holds on to is that we were never equals. But Info's like, yeah, of course not. We were never equals. They are kind of got all these powers. Once again, we're just there to ground them. You know, we're supposed to know that, remind them that they're human, but also know what they want. Alana wants the light to conquer over the dark. But what does Moraine want? And for Lon, it's like, I honestly don't think I know anymore what she wants. But we also find out, well, they found the letter, the poem, and they read it, and it turns out it's about another one of the Dark One's people, and what's it, Lanfear? And they're like, we can't let Lon know what this is about. Now, I don't know if that's supposed to be like, okay, we can't let him know because he has some kind of connection to Lanfear, or is it more so a thing of, well, the fact is, if he knows that this is about Moraine and she's aware about it, that means that she's going to go head first into this whole situation, and we can't let Lan try and follow behind her with something so I don't know if that's it. It just feels like there might be a personal connection between Lan and her. The reason why they didn't really want him to know about it, but because like I said, he might not know enough of the old tongue. Maybe he's able to pick up some stuff, but maybe because we saw him staring at the letter, but it might be that he doesn't know what it says because he hasn't really acted upon anything. I mean, who knows what he can actually do, so. Because he had decided whether or not he was going to go back to the tower. He learned about Nynaeve going through the arches, but we don't know if that's enough to... that wasn't... Even he was like, I still don't know if I'm going to go back to the tower or not. So not quite sure what the 100% make of that element of it. And so the other two sides of the story, being Rand and Moraine's, are obviously tied together. But let's start off with Moraine. She shows up in town, and the woman that was getting close to Rand last episode, I wonder, did she know who Rand was? Is that the reason why she approached him? But I'm going to butcher her name. I think it's like Avery. It's how you pronounce her name. It turns out she's Moraine's sister. I was like, dude, I don't remember them. And maybe, like I said, I didn't have a chance to rewatch season 1. I feel like I don't remember them ever bringing up the whole Aes Sedai can age slowly thing, but they're putting it all together with Liandrin and her son, and now Moraine and her sister, her little sister, who's now older than her. Well, looks older than her at the very least. I was like, interesting. So we learn a lot more about Moraine's past. I'm sure this is stuff that probably even Lon probably doesn't know about her having a sister and everything, and the family she left behind, because their family had to face a lot of ruin, and Avare's the only one who was able. She stayed behind. She kind of had no choice. She wanted to kind of go off. She didn't really blame Moraine for going off and becoming an Aes Sedai. It's like, honestly, I practiced every night to try and channel, but it was never good enough. You were always Dad's golden star, shooting star, in fact, because he was hoping that you would come back and restore this family's glory and make it kind of whole again. But that never was the case. But me, I did what I did. I had to, no matter what I had to do, I would do it if it meant making me stronger. And I even love that conversation she had with her sister. It's like, I actually had gotten to the point now, I don't care what you think anymore, but you're not going to come into this city and ruin what I've built up. Like, all those people that were meant to be your spies, they work for me. So if you want to know where Rand is, all you have to do is have tea with me, because Moraine was trying to avoid being around his sister. But she had that moment where she kind of smirked a little, because I think she was impressed with like, I haven't been around my sister in a couple decades. I didn't realize how cunning and how powerful you are and how far your reach has become. That you are... I've underestimated you, sister. That, I guess in her mind, it's almost like, yeah, I did kind of look down upon you, but you've proven me wrong. Like, there was almost like, I think, a sense of pride of like, right, I was worried. And maybe she keeps her distance, not just because of the Aes Sedai and there's just weird emotional connections from people kind of being severed, but I think it's also because she felt guilt. Even though she wants to say she doesn't, there's probably some part of her that does feel guilty leaving her sister behind and getting too close to her. I mean, because this is also her having to face someone she left behind. It's like the same thing she's doing to Lan right now. It's like she would probably avoid being around Lan right now if she could, just to avoid having to deal with those feelings of abandoning someone that is important to you. Because Moraine did go around trying to find out about Rand, and she even went to go see Logain. She's the one that put him here. So I guess she convinced the White Tower to let her do it. I mean, well, I was about to say, how does she do that? But it's like, right, we know she has sway with the Amarin, so it's like, that's not too much. Because apparently, like, the yellow and the brown Aes Sedai wanted to study him. And, they probably don't have many opportunities to study these false dragons and men who can channel, because more often than not, they probably have to put them down. But in this case, it's especially as powerful as Logain is, that apparently she's the one that pointed Rand in this direction. It's like, yeah, it makes you, because I was about to say, it makes sense why he knew exactly where Logain was. Like, I was like, maybe he was spending this time to slowly get close to him. Because it's not like he could be like, hey, this Aes Sedai sent me here. It's like, no, got to keep his profile low, and also probably wouldn't been able to kind of really prove any of that. So it might also be this type of situation where Moraine's the one that didn't want there to be some connection back to her or some paper trail. I mean, to be fair, she showed up at that mental ward regardless. And, an Aes Sedai walking around that town is going to take notice anyway. So it's not, but I guess it's like, considering she's kind of out of reach of the White Tower currently, she's able to kind of do that without causing too much of a stir. I don't know. Maybe there was just nothing she could really do to help Rand at the time, but knowing that she's the one that pointed him in that direction is interesting. I mean, in grand scheme of things, it makes sense. But I wondered that last episode, I was like, wait, who put him there? Was it the Aes Sedai White Tower? No, they were saying like it seemed like he had a wealthy family, but it's like, no, that was just to cover. But they said that in front of Rand, so I was like, well, they don't know that Rand has a connection with the person who actually is paying for him being here. I don't know if she's lying and said that he's kind of family and not telling the truth of why he's there, or what that situation is. Because maybe that is Moraine's way of like covering her trail by making it seem like, no, it's family paying for this person here without anyone really knowing who Logain is. He was a false dragon, and the White Tower is aware that he's in Moraine's custody somewhere, but not maybe the exact detail. I don't know. We don't know who knows what and to what degree. And, you know, like I said, in the conversation at the White Tower and stuff. But tying this in with the whole situation with Rand, him feeling bad about, like, burning down Celine's inn and everything, and her being like, oh, why don't you go with me, which I thought the timing was interesting. I'm like, well, Moraine's in town and you just keep missing each other type of situation. And obviously that ties all into the opening. The moment the opening happened, I was like, that's Celine, isn't it? The person that, because they were saying, like, right, Ishmael is going out and he's going to be summoning the other lieutenants. And I was like, that's got to be Celine, right? They made such a point of showing her covered in blood, but covering her face with her hair. I was like, it's got to be. I was like, that looked like that was a woman's figure. And I was like, that's got to be Celine, right? Because I brought it up last episode, like the quote-unquote dream that Rand had. I was like, was that a dream? Was that real? I was like, it just seemed like she's making such a point to be around Rand. It's like, she's got to, because once again, he got close to a dark friend last episode. So, of course, him now officially being the dragon, of course, like, they're going to have people close by. And I guess that was Celine's interest in him. But especially the way she kept talking about her lover, the person that she ever really loved, and how not in detail she was going in about him. I was like, yes, there's something here. Like, either it's the Dark One or it's Ishmael. I have no idea. Like I said, the timing was all just a little too perfect, because later on, we get attacked by a Fade, and she just happens to wake up to warn Random, like, and it's a Fade by itself. There was like 3 or 4 Fades that attacked Moraine. So you're telling me they wouldn't have more than one coming after Rand? I guess it's like she needed to, maybe she didn't know for sure. Well, no, because that channeling from last episode, that might have been a situation of, he probably was dreaming, because they can infect your dreams. So it could probably just be that Celine or Lanfear got inside of his head in his dream. So that didn't actually happen. It just probably did just happen in a dream. But, and she tried to act so distraught, like, oh, why didn't you tell me you could channel? And he's like, yeah, I didn't want, you were the first person to see me as a man, and I didn't want you to see me as a monster. And I guess that also is supposed to be like almost this slight against Egwene, because not that she saw him as a monster, because she doesn't, but it was more so about, I think, how they have their history and that reluctancy to see him just as a man. I mean, maybe he was just talking in his instance, but he was like, you're the only one who saw me as a man, because even Moraine sees you as, like, and he doesn't want her to see him any other way, but it's like she saw him as the dragon, a means to an end. So, I mean, once again, Moraine's relationship with that group was kind of its own thing, right? So, but I'm so curious what she's going to get out of that. She, like it says, like, oh, Rand, I have to tell you the truth, I'm also a monster. At first I was like, are you trying to, like, get impregnated by him? Is that what this was? I even started wondering, like, when that energy starts swirling around, I'm like, is she trying to absorb his powers? Like, what's her thing? Because the message is talking about her kind of basically, either it's kind of like the poem is either implying, like, oh, she's trying to rekindle with her previous love, or she's trying to find a new love, and once she does, it kind of seems like all hell is going to break loose. So that's why I was like, is she trying to steal his powers as a dragon, or is she trying to have his baby and that be a whole other thing? Luckily, Moraine showed up, stabbed her with Rand's sword, and slit her throat, and he was upset, like, you killed her. It's like, no, I couldn't even if I wanted to. That's one of the Forsaken, that's Lanfear. She's the daughter of the night, she's with the Dark One. She lied to you, manipulated you. Obviously, as you know, I can't lie to you, so I'm telling you the truth right now. We need to get the hell out of here. So, interesting development. Like I said, because of that opening, I was like, I already had my suspicions of our last episode, and this just solidified it even more, like that opening. So I was like, it has to be Celine. Because she had talked about her previous lover being like a mirror, but the fact is, the problem was that he stared too long last time, and so, because Rand wanted to move away from her, because he's like, right, I'll end up killing the people I love, and she's like, wait, are you trying to imply that you love me? I guess that's why she picked this time now to kind of, even though they've had sex before, this seemed like it was going to be different, but especially because she tied him down, so it's like, you didn't want him to escape once whatever was about to happen started, so have no idea. Maybe we'll kind of get a better understanding of Lanfear circumstances next episode, but interesting developments. I'm excited to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.